The governor of Colorado has signed a for-cause eviction law into effect that will ban landlords from being able to end the lease at the end of the lease term. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I've talked about how the state of Colorado was trying to pass this for-cause eviction law that would basically ban landlords from being able to not renew their leases if they so choose. So a landlord will be forced to renew their lease on a tenant, whether they want to or not, or they have to go through the entire civil eviction process if they want to remove a tenant. Now, I don't agree with this law, okay? In my opinion, it is a lot easier for a landlord to say, hey, at the end of the lease term, for whatever reason, I don't want to renew the lease on this tenant, rather than saying, hey, I got to go all the way up to eviction court. I got to go hire a lawyer. I got to go through the civil eviction process to be able to renew a bad tenant. And so, a lot of lawyers or a lot of landlords, rather than going through court, they say, hey, it's just easier for me just to say, I'm just not going to renew. I'm not going to renew for whatever reason that might be. Whether it is, hey, this tenant always pays me late. Whether it is, hey, this tenant treats me with disrespect and is a big problem causer. Whatever the reason, the landlord should not be forced to renew their lease. So, they think they're solving some sort of a problem here by saying, oh, you know what, these malicious landlords, they were acting out and they were punishing tenants, they were harassing the tenants, and that is the only reason they didn't renew. No, it isn't. It isn't. Okay, there's a lot of things that aren't being said here, and I'm going to break this article that I have down and tell you why it's complete garbage. It's complete garbage. This law is garbage. It's not going to protect as many tenants as they think it will, and there's still going to be a lot of landlords who are left hanging because, you know what, the good landlords, the ones who are following all the rules, we're the ones who suffer when they pass garbage like this legislation here. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So what do you think of these laws, okay? Notice that there are so many states. I believe there are 6 states now. Now, not counting all of the local municipalities and, local cities and counties within states. But there are 6 full states that have banned landlords from being able to terminate their lease at the end of the defined lease term, basically making your lease useless, making it invalid. Okay, so if you said, hey, this is the 12-month term, well, that's useless now because the tenant can decide to stay however long they want. And you know what? It's going to expand to other states as well. Okay, it's going to expand all over the country. And the fact that this is happening in Colorado, not just on the coast, that is a clear sign of that. Anyway, let's get into this article. I want to explain exactly what they agreed upon in the state of Colorado. This article is coming from KiowaCountyPress.net, and it says, Governor Paulus signs for-cause eviction bill into law. Let's see what the law says. Colorado landlords will now need a specific reason to evict or not offer a lease renewal to a tenant under a new law signed by Democratic Governor Jared Polis on Friday. It is a victory for tenants' rights organizers and progressive legislators who seek to include renters in the conversation about how to address the state's housing and affordability issues. Colorado is the 6th state to enact such a policy. Everybody here wants to prevent unnecessary evictions and save families money. And House Bill 1098 does these things while placing no financial burdens on landlords. This is the right thing to do, Representative Javier Mabry, a Denver Democrat, said at the bill signing in the governor's office, surrounded by a crowd of housing advocates. And the very first thing he says is a lie, okay? This places no financial burden on landlords. Complete garbage, okay? Because if you have a person who you otherwise would have been able to terminate their lease at the end of a 12-month period, but now you have to take that person to court, well, guess what? That is a financial burden. How is he so dumb that he doesn't realize this? But that is the plain truth, okay? So you have a tenant. Let's say you have a tenant in your property, right? And this tenant is always paying the rent late, okay? Late, but paying it just enough in time so that they don't have to face an eviction order. This person is constantly a problem. You always are having to go and contact them trying to get the rent paid, and you're like, hey, this is too much. I can put a better tenant up in this property. I'm just not going to renew your lease at the end of the 12-month lease term that we agreed to. Well, no, you can't do that now. Because this person always paid their rent on time, the only way you can remove that tenant now, this garbage tenant who always pays late, the only way you can remove them is by going through the civil eviction process. And it's going to be pretty hard to remove this tenant when they still always pay. They always pay, but they always pay late. Now, I don't like that. I don't like that. You know, my numbers, when I have to pay my mortgages on my properties, I don't get to say, well, my tenant didn't pay me until, 10 days after the rent was due. But, the eviction, there was never any full eviction. So therefore, no, it's garbage. It's a garbage rule. You know what? And, I don't agree with this. So yeah, there is going to be a cost to landlords. There is going to be a expense that we incur by having to go through the eviction process. The bill was backed by Mabry, House Majority Leader Monica Duran of Wheat Ridge, Senator Julie Gonzalez of Denver, and Senator Nick Henriksen of Pueblo, all Democrats. The new law codifies what is known as for-cause eviction, meaning that a landlord cannot evict or decline to renew a tenant without a defined reason. That makes it easier for tenants to stay in their homes if they choose. Now, they pushed this law, and they have a ton of reasons in there. So for all of the tenant rights people who think that this law is going to protect them, it isn't. Okay, it isn't going to protect you from getting evicted from the property. It's not going to help more people. It's not going to help as many people as they think it will. Okay, the only thing it's really going to do is make it more expensive and a longer, slower process for landlords. That's it. That's all that this is going to do. And the 0.01% of bad landlords who were acting maliciously before, well, they're going to continue to act bad. That's the problem. They're going to continue to act bad, and instead now you've got a bunch of good landlords who have to jump through all of these additional hoops to get rid of bad tenants. So instead of protecting good tenants from bad landlords, you're not doing that. You're instead, protecting bad tenants from good landlords. How does, you created a law that does the opposite of what it was intended to do, okay? So let me explain why that is as we go through this, because they clarify in the article exactly what these protections are and what they do. It says, landlords can lawfully evict a tenant in the middle of the lease for non-payment of rent, destruction of property, a substantial lease violation, or interference with the quiet enjoyment of other tenants. The substantial part of the law is around non-renewals at the end of the lease term. A non-renewal is only allowed if the property is being sold, demolished, substantially renovated, turned into a short-term rental, or the landlord's family plans to move in. So based on that paragraph alone, 99% of all evictions are still 100% going to happen. Okay? This isn't, like I said, this isn't going to protect anybody. So, like I said, you can lawfully evict in the middle of the lease for non-payment of rent, which is 90 to 95% of all evictions right there. 90 to 95% of all evictions are for non-payment of rent. Destruction of property, a substantial lease violation, or interference with quiet enjoyment of the other tenants. Right there, you probably covered 99% of all evictions fall under those categories right there, right? And the for-cause eviction protections only cover the people who are not renewed, which is a minuscule portion of the people who are, terminated. So keep in mind, landlords, it costs us a lot of money to do a tenant turnover, okay? We want to keep tenants in our properties paying every month. And most landlords are not trying to get rid of tenants willy-nilly for whatever reason, because it costs us thousands of dollars. Why? What do they not understand about that? Okay? It doesn't make, like, they act like, oh yeah, you know what? The tenant got, the tenant or the landlord was malicious. They were just pissed off at the tenant, and they were just like, you know what? I just want you out of here. So I'm just gonna kick you out, and then, for no reason. Well, you know what? Every single time that I put a new tenant into one of my properties, I have to pay thousands of dollars just to get the place cleaned up. Okay, I mean, maybe I'm not talking about thousands of dollars, but we'll say it does cost me thousands of dollars in terms of, if I have 1 month of lost rent, if I have to pay for any, cleanup, for any updates that I make to the property, and to pay a lease up fee to my property manager. Yeah, I'm out thousands of dollars just to get a new tenant up in there. So why in the world? And I've got the same problem when I get a new tenant because, I can do background checks and all that, but, until I know that tenant is going to be paying me and treating the property correctly regularly, I have no clue if I'm going to get a better tenant or a worse tenant than the previous one. So, yeah, for most landlords, this is the same story. We're not trying to ever get a tenant up out of there. We want that tenant to stay up in there for as long as possible paying us rent, because that is how we make our money. So yeah, the whole thought, we're going to make this law because this is an epidemic of non-renewals for good tenants for no reason. No, that's garbage. Okay, the number one reason I could see a landlord doing a non-renewal on a tenant who you would think would be a good tenant would be for being able to increase the rent for the next tenant because the current tenant is unable to pay. So if a landlord is doing that, they likely would fall under this substantial renovation thing, or they could use any of these other excuses, so there's so many excuses there that nobody would ever be able to prove otherwise, and the tenant would be wasting their time to just not leave. So, to me, this isn't going to protect anybody. Like I said, the bad landlords, they're going to just lie. They're just going to be like, oh yeah, my cousin's moving in, or my son or my daughter or my uncle or whatever is going to move into the property, so I need you to go. That's what a bad person who is lying would do just to get that person out. And I'm not suggesting anybody do that. I'm just telling you the truth of what exactly is going to happen. So, this law is not going to protect anybody. It's going to hurt good landlords who do follow the rules. It's going to protect bad tenants and make it so that they, don't get kicked out like they should be. This is stupid. It's a dumb law. I don't agree with it, and we're going to see more of it. New York is also going to be passing this law pretty soon.